Welcome back to the first election coverage, and it is looking so good tonight with me, your humble and balding host, Jesse Kelly. Now, before I bring in my friend Buck Sexton, I just want to point out that people make sacrifices all the time, large and small sacrifices. And when people make sacrifices for things they care about, I think it's appropriate to applaud them, to praise them. Let's go ahead and bring in my friend Buck Sexton, obviously host of the Clay and Buck Show. Everyone knows Buck Sexton. Certainly everybody watching us right now knows Buck Sexton. Buck deserves a great deal of credit for something that, I haven't said this to him privately, so we're just going to do this live on the air. Buck is making a sacrifice to be here because Buck, he was sitting there on his couch eating pistachio creme brulee. And he took the pistachio creme brulee, I'm sure he probably had his pinky out, and he set it aside to come do some TV for us right here on the first. And Buck, I don't want to call you a hero. Maybe that's too far, but I just want you to know that I appreciate you, Buck. I appreciate you very much to make a sacrifice like that. It means a lot to all of us. Really, it does.
Well, I had to slap my butler and say, take this away from me. Make sure that it's chilled perfectly. I have to go hang out with my friend Jesse Kelly, who, what is this? It's 9:30 at night. You look like you're dressed for a Mutual of Omaha conference somewhere, like this jacket, this button down.
Well, some of us, Buck, some of us have chosen to continue doing television because we don't have the largest radio show in the United States of America. I have the humble, very, very humble Jesse Kelly show. And I also love being on the first so much that I get dressed up and I still do television. I don't live my life in wife beaters and sweatpants and things like that like you do now. Some of us still work more than 15 minutes a day. I wouldn't expect you to understand that.
I just also, we're going to get into the election and saving Western civilization. By the way, we're in a good mood because we should be in a good mood because everything's looking great so far. Yeah. But I did, since Jesse is airing some dirty laundry here, I think you should all know that now every time I go into my kitchen, it sounds like a Zamboni machine, like that makes the ice all level because my wife bought the biggest, fanciest ice maker I've ever seen in my life. This is nicer than what they have in large hotels because Jesse Kelly was bragging so much about his ice maker. She didn't even consult me. I just came home one day. I'm like, honey, what is that? I mean, it looks like we're building a dirty bomb in my kitchen, and it's an ice maker because of him. So just watch out when you see him tweeting about this. It should be noted
I have been on the receiving end of not just one, multiple hateful text messages from Buck. What is this thing in my kitchen? Jesse, this is your fault. What have you done? Buck, we upgraded you. Okay, speaking of upgrading you, because Carrie and I, we can't handle your ICE situation all on our own. The country's being upgraded as well. In fact, we all might have more money in our pocket, it looks like, because it looks like tonight's going really, really, really well. And I keep being scared to say that, Buck, but I'm trying to find the bad news. I'm sure it's out there somewhere. Obviously, you're not going to win Connecticut, but where's the bad news, Buck? What am I not seeing?
Well, let me start with what we know, because I haven't had a chance to talk to your fine audience. I would just point out that the situation in Florida is like devastation for Democrats. What has happened in my now home state, and eventually we're going to convince Jesse to move to it as well, is nothing short of remarkable. It's a combination of factors, but Florida, you're looking at a 13, 14-point win, perhaps for Trump, which, when all things said and done, is just amazing, right? So you start with that, and then I think you go and you look at where we are in some of these other early vote early vote tabulation scenarios. If Virginia is as close as it seems to be, I don't see how Trump doesn't win Pennsylvania and at least Wisconsin, if not Michigan as well. That's how I see it. I know people are saying that Pennsylvania is trending slightly Kamala right now, but she's going to have to thread the needle in an incredibly precise way, which I guess all needle threading is. So I'm kind of repeating myself, but she's going to have to be very lucky in getting it done there. Look, Ted Cruz just won. I know we could announce that right before I came on, or that was announced, I should say. So once again, they spent an astonishing amount of money to pretend that they were going to beat Cruz, to pretend that they were going to flip Texas. And as much as Florida likes to do donuts in Texas's backyard, Texas is still very red, very solid, and great things going on there. So I look, North Carolina and Georgia are going for Trump. If that happens, what are the odds that Kamala is able to run the table and win tonight? I think you're looking at a 10% shot. I think it's very unlikely.
Oh, what percent shot? Okay, so Buck, explain this to me. That's that famous JFK saying, which I think he stole from someone else, I don't remember, but a victory has 1,000 fathers, but defeat is an orphan, is the most true thing in the history of politics, right? As soon as someone wins, everyone takes credit for it, they figured it all out, and when you lose, right, no one wants to own it. Let's say tonight is what it looks like it might be for Democrats, which is disastrous, a bloodbath. You and I, we were at a party together during the midterms when we were going to get that red wave. And we walked into that party. It was a big election night party in Nashville. It was a great party, by the way. And we were all excited and smiles, and if I may say, a little cocky. I know I was. And then by the end of the night, it was you and I huddled in the corner drinking beer, crying into those beers about what happened to our red wave. So that hurts. Democrats are very likely going through this tonight. Where did they go wrong?
So I actually believe, and I think it's just a matter of time before this becomes something you're going to hear from some Democrats. I think that Dementia Joe was a better shot for them, even with the horrible debate performance. Now he would have had to come out and have a better debate performance, and I think he would have been able to do that. And he would have shouted and done the usual Joe Biden stuff here and there. Think about how much media Kamala Harris did. Biden could have done that. I mean, it was really de minimis. I think that their mistake was thinking that they could run a super short campaign with somebody who is honestly the least competent and dumbest would-be president of a major party that I have seen in my life. I mean, she is, John Kerry is a rocket scientist compared to Kamala Harris, and I think John Kerry's a dumbass. So, as I look at this, they made tremendous mistakes in this process. They did a lot of things that I think show that there was a sense that they could just get away with it because the media was going to be on their side. Here's the thing, and maybe I have to eat my words tomorrow on this. So I've been saying Trump's going to win ever since they said it was Kamala. I was like, no, she's going to lose. There's absolutely no way it's going to happen. If they can make Kamala Harris president, they can make anyone president. And I truly mean that. I mean, they could find the nearest post office worker. They could find the nearest third grade school teacher. They could, anybody, and make that person president if that became the Democrat nominee. And they said that they're obsessed with abortion and Trump is Hitler. So I don't think the country is that deranged yet. And that's my very honest and straightforward assessment of where things are right now. But maybe tomorrow I'll wake up and be like, actually, I was wrong. We're nuts.
No, I back you up on that. I always talk about how we go through stress tests, and sometimes you pass a stress test and sometimes you don't. We've failed massively on every possible way, our COVID stress test. But this election, it may be the bare minimum stress test, but it does prove that we're not completely gone, because you just nailed it. It's not just that she's dumb. She also has no personality whatsoever. She's part of the administration that people are already unhappy with when it comes to inflation, immigration. Long way of saying that if Kamala Harris can win this election, if she could have won this election, let's go ahead and act like she lost. I hope we're not getting ahead of ourselves. If Kamala Harris can win this election, then really national elections don't really matter anymore. The population is so dumbed down and screwed up that they can run anybody and they'll be able to win, and it doesn't matter who we run. But it doesn't look like we're there yet, and that's great news, isn't it?
I think so, yeah. I mean, assuming that, and it's funny because I am having 2022 and 2020 flashbacks, quite honestly. I remember doing analysis on the First and other platforms those nights where it all looked great until it didn't. And I feel like tonight is the last chance we have to feel like we have a country with a majority sane electorate. So that's where a good amount of my confidence comes from. I will feel like if Kamala Harris, if we were to wake up tomorrow and Kamala Harris were somehow the president or, in the process of becoming the president, I would feel like it doesn't really matter anymore. The Republican Party is effectively dead, because she is a moron and she's dishonest and she's done everything that could be done in a political campaign to make people who are deciding on whether or not to trust this person not trust her. She effectively stands for nothing. She has no political or even interpersonal skills whatsoever. And if we can make essentially the DEI or human resources chief hire of our nightmares, the commander in chief of this country, what else is there really? Like, how can we think that there's any point in running sane people for national office? And we really, what it would mean is we haven't suffered enough, and I think we would suffer pretty substantially under a Kamala administration. So maybe things would change then. But look, I am overconfident. I have been overconfident all along. I think Trump has got this thing in the bag, and I think he deserves it. I think it's the greatest political comeback story, maybe in history. I don't know, Jesse. We could sit here and talk about like some of those Roman dudes in the first century BC or something. I mean, you got to go way back. But if you're talking about political comeback stories, to be indicted 4 times, to have the state of New York go after you civilly, multiple impeachments, to be called a fascist and a Nazi by the press in your country, to take a bullet to the side of your head during a rally, and then to beat the candidate of the establishment, it would be the greatest political comeback story, I would argue, in history. And I think we're witnessing it right now. And I certainly hope that that comes to fruition. I think Donald Trump and all the people support him absolutely deserve it.
How do Democrats self-assess after this, if it is what it is? And obviously, self-assessment is one of those things that's very, very difficult in politics, in life. You were never able to self-assess that you were short on ice. It took your lovely bride, Carrie, to step in and do that for you. Self-assessment is very difficult. If you're Democrats and you wake up tomorrow morning, obviously there will be a ton of people who just want to chuck Kamala Harris on the pile and say it was all her fault. And clearly a lot of it was her fault, but this party has problems, Buck, when you're losing 25% of black men, and that's allegedly what they're losing. When you're losing Latino men en masse, they're just getting wiped out by Latino men. When you have critical parts of your coalition leaving you, it would be equivalent to evangelicals going out to vote overwhelmingly Democrat. It just doesn't happen, but it's happening right now to them tonight. How do they self-assess?
Well, I think one thing that they're not very good at is introspection, and being honest with themselves, never mind being honest with anybody else. So they will retreat into a cocoon of Kamala didn't win because of racism and sexism. I don't know if you saw, I was on Bill Maher's show a few weeks ago, and I said, I was like, Trump's going to win. And someone in the audience laughed, and I was like, oh, no, trust me, Trump's going to win. And then I was told by a fellow panelist, who's a Democrat, a black woman who's a host from CNN, that if Kamala doesn't win, essentially, it's because of sexism and racism. And so that will be the primary, because the thing about Democrats is it's all about the feels, right? It's all about what the emotions are from all of this. And for them to admit that on the border alone, to put everything else aside, and I mean the economy, I mean that they want trannies playing in women's sports, and we're supposed to act like Macho Man Randy Savage is like, I'm a girl. And then all of a sudden he's like stiff arming 120-pound chicks. Like, that's normal now because Democrats say it is. Put all of that aside, Jesse. It is entirely justifiable, and I would argue a moral imperative as an American to punish the Democrat Party, and specifically Biden and Kamala Harris, for what they have done and the betrayal on the U.S. border and the 10 million plus illegals that they invited and enabled and conspired with to bring into the country. So do they learn a lesson on that, or do they think they're just biding their time until they can legalize all those illegals if Trump doesn't deport them? That's, I think, really the next step. But that's a long way of saying, Jesse, they will learn nothing from this. Nothing. They will think that they should have won, and Kamala is smart. That's how crazy they are.
That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Buck, you are the best, brother. Come back soon.
Yeah,
Get
man.
back to
Great
your
to see
creme
you.
brulee, your pistachio creme brulee. I appreciate it.
I'll text you crying over it or happy over it later. We'll see.
I would thank you for coming to my YouTube channel, but I know how brilliant it is, and I know you love it here. So subscribe and watch. We're going to start really ramping things up and putting some funny stuff, some interesting stuff out there, some collaborations. Either way, my YouTube channel is officially the place to be. So stick around.